He was here before you were.
Okay, are we rolling? Thank you, and thank you for getting the other stuff up. Okay, we are looking at the end of Candide, and we're just going to touch on it quickly. If you kind of trace the overall movement of the book, 1 through 15 is about, or especially 1 through 10, where are they going? They're going west away from Europe. Yes, they're going away from Europe to Paraguay. Okay. Going to Paraguay, which is in the
New World.
Yes, the New World. Excellent. Okay, I did say this. Sometimes I'm not sure if I said things or if they registered, but you are responsible because I know that you know this. Excellent. Okay, so they have made it to the New World and they discover El Dorado, where they have all the gold and everything that is kind of like not helpful and all of that. Candide discovers that there's someone not there. Who's not there? Cunigund. Cunigund isn't there. He loves Cunigund. He's got to leave El Dorado. They take stuff with them. They take the gold, the jewels, the sheep with the fancy fleeces and all of that. And then they lose a lot of it on the way back. And then let's look at chapter 19. Okay, so we've gone to the New World, 1 through 10. We've got, let's see. They're heading to the New World, and then they get there at 15, and then 19, they are leaving the New World. They are leaving the New World, and where are they going? The New World, by the way, would be the Americas, right? Okay, and he had hoped to find there the best of all possible worlds. He had hoped that, oh, this would be the best of all possible worlds where things are good and people, and he really kind of finds it in El Dorado, but you'd say, well, if that's really what you wanted, why didn't you stay there? There's still something missing, that human touch, that Cunigund. If you think about it, I don't know that he's doing this, but maybe because in the Odyssey, go back to your 101 class. Some of you will go back to the Huddle House, because we read it overnight at the Huddle House, all in one night. Think back to the Odyssey, and remember Calypso gave him the opportunity to stay with her. She's a nymph, and he could stay with her. He would be young forever, beautiful goddess, all this would be great. It would be an island paradise with some beautiful woman. I don't know who that would be these days. Who's a beautiful young model? Yes.
Me. Oh, no.
Me.
You're a beautiful model? Yep. No, a beautiful young girl. Who? Megan Fox. Okay. He says Megan Fox. Odysseus is given the opportunity to be young and stay on this island paradise with Megan Fox forever. And what does he say? No, I'm going to go home and see my wife. And because that is what is human. It's to sail and go through all of these struggles and all of this. I mean, he's got to get blasted out of the sea by Poseidon, and then his men have already died, and he's going to have to fight all the suitors and kill them and all that. It's not pleasant, but he chooses that. Okay, so because that's what's human, he loves his wife, Penelope. Similarly, here he goes, he's leaving the New World to go find Cunigund. I don't know that she quite compares to Penelope, but we'll see. Now, whom does he encounter on page 552?
A slave.
No. A slave. No. Big and on.
Yes, he encounters on page 552 the slave. Okay, and he has lost a leg and without a leg, without a hand, and what is he wearing?
Underwear.
Well, not underwear. He's wearing a pair of just linen drawers, is what they. So he's not got like a suit of clothes or something. So he's like, it's the whatever he was issued right? He was just issued this, what, once a year, I think they get a pair of drawers, they say?
Twice.
And so, who treated you this way? And it's the first long paragraph on 552. Yes, sir, said the Negro. That's how things are around here. Twice a year, we get a pair of linen drawers to wear. If we catch a finger in the sugar mill where we work, they cut off our hand. No fingers in the cup of sugar over there. If we try to run away, they cut off our leg. Where we work, they cut off our hand. Let's see, yeah, I have undergone both these experiences. This is the price of the sugar you eat in Europe. You definitely, to everybody online, here, wherever you are, remember that line. This is the price of the sugar you eat in Europe. And yet, when my mother sold me for 10 Patagonian crowns, she said, bless our witch doctors, reverence them, they'll make your life happy. You have the honor of being a slave to our white masters, and you're making the fortune of your mother and father. It sounds very similar to what we heard in Swift. These babies will make the fortunes of their parents, right? And so we've got the same sort of thing going on here. And now, we would never think of eating babies, would we? What about this business? What's Voltaire referencing here? This would never happen, right?
He's just saying, because he ate the sugar is considered stealing, so that's the punishment he got.
So, this isn't nearly as bad? It's terrible.
Well, it's almost worse because it's way more likely to happen.
And Voltaire is looking at this and recognizing that it does happen all the time, right? Yeah, I mean, because this is the slavery that people are undergoing in the South and Central Americas and then in the Northern Americas as well. Yes.
So how did the slave, get around? Because I'm sure they didn't have, wheelchairs and crutches.
I think they just probably dumped him, yes. I mean, that's the whole point, is that they just find him there. And nobody cares. Now, how does Candide respond to this? Next paragraph. Candide says, okay, boss, I need a Candide. You can be Candide. Oh, you don't have, you have to be Candide then. Hand him your book and get him to read the lines. See, that's what happens when you don't bring your book, you have to read to everyone. It starts, oh, Pangloss, right in the middle of 552.
Oh, Pangloss, cried Candide. You had no notion of these in book. I can't say that word.
Abomination.
Yeah, that one. I'm through. I must give up your optimism after all. What optimism, said Cambo or whatever.
Combo.
Alas, said Candide, it is a mania for saying things are well when one is compelled.
And you need to remember that. And remember we talked about Leibniz, and we talked about philosophic optimism, right?
Which one we need to remember about the mania?
Yes, philosophic optimism. And I must give up your optimism after all. So finally Candide says, forget that. I don't believe in this optimism. I don't believe it's the best of all possible worlds. I'm going to give up your optimism. Leibniz philosophic optimism. And he says, what's that? What is optimism? It's a mania for saying...
Hey, Dr. Abernathy.
Pardon?
I can't.
You can't get that?
Yeah.
It's not going to show up? Okay. Let's see. For saying things are well when, I'm just going to shorten it, in hell. Okay? That'll save some of it. And it's on 552. I'm just quoting this straight off of 552. Okay? So you need to know that. You need to know that line. Because that's when you have, I mean, finally Candide, who's been kind of like, well, maybe, well, I don't know, well, I'll think about it. Finally, Candide says, no, that's enough. When he says what people are, when he sees what people are doing in order to have sugar in Europe, because sugar was not, you know, where does sugar come from? I mean, sugar cane. Where was it grown?
Caribbean.
The Caribbean, yeah, the islands, yes, and so and so you've got this one area that's growing sugar, and they're doing it through slave work, through slave labor, and so he says, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. So they head back home, okay, they are heading home. They talk to Martin, who, of course, has proved that he is he was the most miserable guy. They consider why was the world made, environmental is fighting, and that sort of thing. Look at chapter 23. Okay. Looking at, it's under chapter 23, it's the second kind of significantly long paragraph. It's as they chatted thus, page 564 in chapter 23. It's like the fourth paragraph down, and there are no quotes. As they chatted thus, the vessel touched at Portsmouth. A multitude of people covered the shore, watching closely a rather bulky man who was kneeling, his eyes blindfolded on the deck of a man of war. 4 soldiers stationed directly in front of this man fired 3 bullets apiece into his brain as peaceably as you would want. The whole assemblage went home in a great satisfaction. What's all this about? Asked Candide. What devil is everywhere at work? You get a reference to the devil again, and we're close to the end. You got that at the beginning, you get it at the end. He asked who was the big man. It was an admiral, they told him. Why kill this admiral? The reason they told him is that he didn't kill enough people, okay? Because he didn't kill enough people in battle, maybe he wasn't strong enough on that side of the war. And so Candide, footnote 4, if you look at this on footnote 4 on page 564, Candide has witnessed the execution of Admiral John Byng, defeated off of Minorca by the French fleet under Galissonière and executed by firing squad. Voltaire had intervened to avert the execution. Voltaire had tried to stop this execution. So, I mean, Voltaire is a politically important writer. I mean, he's not just, you know, he's not just an author, not just a novelist, but he's writing with political import because he has been involved in a lot of political things. So, he sees these things as important. Okay, we get then all the way to the, we're going to skip on over to the end, okay?
Do you know what he did to intervene?
He probably just wrote letters, is what I'm thinking, or appealed to someone in charge. I'm not sure what he did, I just know, actually I just know from the footnote. But it didn't work, I mean, the guy was really executed. Okay. We go on to 29. Candide has found Coonigan and the old woman again. It's kind of like everybody is still alive. Now this is satire, okay? We're still dealing with the form satire. And he's not just satirizing people's problems, he's also satirizing the form of the novel, because he's saying it's kind of ridiculous the way some people write, because these people come back to life again over and over and over again. And so there's kind of this ridiculous magical intervention in plots that happens. It's kind of like, it's deus ex machina that is Aristotle says in the ancient Greek tragedies, you don't want deus ex machina, the gods coming from the machine, where, oh, you've got a problem, and so they bring the god down with a crane, and poof, he fixes everything, because that's improbable. You know, I mean, miracles happen, but if you haven't studied for your test, and if you haven't read anything in here, probably God's not going to suddenly poof, fix your brain so you can pass the test, right? Or Deus Ex Machina. If you've watched, is it Toy Story 3? Is probably the best example of Deus Ex Machina that I can think of. Is it Toy Story 3 where they're going down the recycling bin belt? Okay. And right at the end, is it the little aliens that put the claw down in there? And, you know, like that's, it's like, Did you not see it, or?
I had not seen it yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, now you know. The aliens saved them right at the last minute. The claw comes down and rescues
There
them.
was a fire ahead of them.
The fire's right in front of them, yep. And so it's like, we're gonna be burned up, and then here comes the claw with the aliens. So that's totally Deus Ex Machina. I mean, even from above and the whole 9 yards. It's not likely that the alien little dudes would come with the claw and all of that. But they do, okay? And so Voltaire is making fun of that by having people miraculously come back to life over and over and over again. So, pardon?
Isn't that so dumb?
It is kind of dumb, yeah. And so he's making fun of that.
I want to talk about Toy Story.
But with
Oh
Toy
my
Story,
God.
that's how the aliens were rescued by a claw. So does that have anything to do with, like, with the concept that of them coming to life and then saving them with the claw?
Yeah, I guess you could say that there's kind of unity in Toy Story, because it's like you start here and then it's finished over. It's kind of, yeah. So it does make sense in Toy Story,
What's
yeah.
that gonna be called? Deus what?
Deus Ex Machina. Let's see if I can make the pen work. Okay, I'll write it up here. It's Deus, which is D-E-U-S, God, X, coming from, and then Machina is machine, basically. I make it legible. X, and then Machina is M-A-C-H-I-N-A. Okay. That's part of, and that's a good thing to add. That's a good point. That he's making fun of that. That's how he's making fun of that in literature. So he is writing satire also about literature, not just about the stupidity of people and humans and human institutions like slavery and wars over stupid things and killing generals because they didn't kill enough people in battle, that sort of thing. So he's satirizing that, but he's also satirizing literary form here. Okay. Pardon?
It means God out of the machine.
Yes, coming from the machine. Yes. Did you just Google Translate it?
Yeah.
Yeah. God's coming from the machine. Because it's like in ancient Greek tragedy, they would, lower Zeus down or somebody. And so Aristotle says that's not normal, Zeus doesn't fly down in the, from the sky. Okay, now let's look at the very end on page 578 to 579 here. Okay. Now they find a nice little farm. They're going to hang out at this nice little farm, right? And this is good and pleasant, and they're just going. What does he kind of come to? What is his final recommendation for them to do?
Grow our garden.
Cultivate your own garden. Yes, let's just cultivate our own garden. Now, what does that mean?
Cherish the thing that you have and look into God.
Make your own.
Pretty much, make your own. Instead of, I guess it was more so focused that they was too into what war was doing, what was going on with the colony and so forth, and the public works that anytime they more so put their focus into public, they leave focus of facing what God really had intended for them.
Okay. There's. I think the main thing that I heard everybody kind of say is your own. You focus on your own, whatever you are called to do, whatever your talents are, wherever your world is, rather than. But the odd thing is, okay, this kind of works. But he's also picking at Pangloss. Remember, give me a little oil and wine? So give me a little oil and wine. And he's like, well, the earthquake, did we read that? We read that part, right? Where he was under all this earthquake rubble. And he says, for God's sake, a little oil and wine. What parable does this go back to? Who asked?
Right tomorrow.
Parable.
I don't know about parable.
Who actually doesn't ask for oil and wine, but somebody gives the person some.
Oh, Jesus on the cross.
It's not a parable.
That's vinegar, yeah.
At the
Parable.
wedding, a wine.
Pardon?
That we're asking?
There's
The wine at the wedding?
no.
That was a miracle, though.
There is a
What
parable,
you're talking
a parable where somebody needs some oil and wine.
To Google.
Cheater.
Just kidding.
What?
No, nothing.
What did you just?
I said to Google.
To Google.
I was gonna Google it.
Oh, come on. There's a guy on the ground and he's hurt and he needs some oil and wine.
Oh, the Good Samaritan.
Thank you. Yes, the Good Samaritan. Yeah, and the guy, you use oil and wine to
heal the wounds.
to heal the wounds. Yes. And
Wow, I never
so
known.
the Good Samaritan, and Voltaire is really talking about that. He says Pangloss is this idiot philosopher who's talking about, well, there was an earthquake here, so there's probably an earthquake there, and blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, give me some oil and wine. And so he's showing us that, okay, maybe the philosophy, the whole optimism nonsense, gets people so convinced that, you're the poor you'll have always with you, so don't feed them. Or there are people suffering, it's just going to happen that way, don't worry about them. And he's saying, no, look at this. This guy is lying under rubble, and he's referencing us back to the Good Samaritan and saying, no, if somebody needs oil and wine, you should give them oil and wine. Now, at the end, when he comes back, when they come back to Europe and they have their own plot of land. Okay, they could do philosophy, but that's not going to get them very far. They just need to cultivate their garden. They just need to grow some things, just like this simple guy on page 579 that they need. The good old man, these are the last 6 lines, 7 lines I guess, 6 or 7 lines on page 579. Pangloss, Candide, and Martin, as they returned to their little farm, passed a good man who was enjoying the cool of the day at his doorstep under a grove of orange trees. Pangloss, who was as inquisitive as he was explanatory, still wanting to think about things, asked the name of the mufti who had been strangled. I know nothing of it, said the good man, and I have never cared to know the name of a single mufti or vizier. I am completely ignorant of the episode you are discussing. I presume that in general, those who meddle in public business sometimes perish miserably, and that they deserve their fate. But I never listened to the news from Constantinople. I'm satisfied with sending the fruits of my garden to be sold there. Now, he says this, and they ask, how it is. He says, you must have lots of property and all of this. And the Turk says, I have only 20 acres. I cultivate them with my children, and the work keeps us from 3 great evils: boredom, vice, and poverty. And so they just cultivate their land. Now, they sell stuff to Constantinople, right? He sells stuff, but he says, I'm just going to mind my own business, and that will keep me from getting into this mess. Now, Candide picks this up, and he says, yep, they all do something useful, even down to Brother Giroflé. They all do something useful, and they cultivate their own garden. And when Pangloss tries to bring up some kind of philosophizing again, he says, well, that's nice, but we just need to do our work. We need to cultivate our own garden. What do you think about that? What does it mean to cultivate your own garden, and do you think that is that enough? Is that good? Hannah, should we just cultivate our own garden?
No, I think it's being kind of selfish.
Pardon?
I think it's being kind of selfish.
Sounds kind of selfish.
Sooner or later you run out of nutrients for your own ground and stuff. And
Okay.
you run out of food, so you wouldn't be able to grow any more food.
Okay.
Is it really that literal though? Or is it more like help yourself out? Kind of like
Okay.
do whatever it is that you feel you need to do to like
I still think that's
satisfy
selfish too,
yourself.
though. I still think that's selfish too, like.
Put your efforts in things that are going to give you the outcome, the most outcome, and don't invest in other people.
Right, and I don't agree.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
feel like that's what.
Because eventually, you always have to invest in other people. Life's about relationships.
Right, well, you also have to like worry about your own welfare, or you can't help anybody else.
Okay. You have to worry about your own welfare. And if you're doing what you're supposed to do, then at least you're taking care of yourself.
Well, it's just not accepting defeat or not accepting things just the way they happen to happen. If you're not happy with something, change it. I mean, that's kind of the point.
Okay, so if there's not if you want to change something, the reason I'm repeating it is so everybody can hear. Yeah, if you want to change something, do something about it. Okay.
You can't just think everything happens like,
Just everything.
just let it happen. You have to do something about it.
It's the best of both worlds, because it's not.
Okay, so he has taken a step from this optimism. Instead of just, well, it's just going to happen that way, at least he's doing something now. I also wonder about cultivating your own garden and the new world. That he's looking at colonialism and things like that. Cultivate your garden. Don't go try to cultivate somebody else's garden, or don't for your benefit. I also wonder about that. That I was thinking about this and it hit me the other night. That's kind of what he's saying. If you cultivate your own garden rather than trying to cultivate other people, like in slavery, that sort of thing, then for one thing that might reduce human suffering. The old man, that old wise man, does sell stuff to other countries. So he is engaged with other countries, but there's also that sense of cultivate your own garden so you're not killing people over religion or boundaries. It's like your garden, don't try to steal somebody else's garden. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's kind of where I was saying, is it's like most of the evil is because they're trying to take over things that belong to other people that was not rightfully theirs. So if they just focus more so on what they have as theirs, then that would keep them from the other peoples of trying to take control of everything else.
Yeah, rather than trying to run other countries or take their land. Yes.
I don't really see like that it says like cultivate your own garden. It says like cultivate our garden. I feel like it's saying like work for like what you want to happen. Like things aren't just gonna fall in place. Like you gotta like do things about it. But I don't really feel like it's saying like cultivate your own garden, like mind your business. I feel like it's just saying like things aren't just gonna fall in place.
Okay, we have to actually do some work here rather than.
Right, but I don't feel like it's like saying like don't help other people out or mind your, you know what I mean? I feel like it's just saying.
Okay, so one could still help other people out.
Like I don't see your own garden in there. I just see cultivate our garden.
Establishing yourself before you help somebody else. So that's what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying like you keep saying cultivate your own garden, but it just says cultivate our garden. Like I feel like it's just saying to work for what you want to, you know, what you want to achieve in life, or things aren't just going to fall into place, or things aren't always just how they're meant to be. Like you have to, you know, give something.
You know, that's something that I don't think I've ever noticed, that it's cultivate our garden. It's not cultivate my garden, it's our garden. So there is that sense of human relationship there. And they do each have, what was it? Everybody did something useful. That is a good point. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to what she's saying, because further down there it talks about how it says, "You are perfectly right," said Primrose, "for when man was put into the Garden of Eden, he was put there ad operator eum, so that he should work it. This proves that man was not born to take his ease."
Right.
So,
Like don't just sit back and like let things happen.
I think it's also saying to don't just pay somebody else to do everything for you also. It's actually, you need to put in your effort to, I guess, establish your future or to do your...
That's a good point. And I hadn't paid attention to ut operator that you would be working it, and that's true. Yeah, it's not like God put Adam and Eve there and said, "Okay, here is your lazy boy and your TV, and you go get somebody to work the Garden of Eden for you." Yeah, we're not supposed to go get somebody else to work our garden for us. We must cultivate, and then there's that continuation of that where. The whole little group, next to last paragraph, the whole little group entered into this laudable scheme. Each one began to exercise his talents. The little plot yielded fine crops. Cunnigan was, to tell the truth, remarkably ugly. I mean, after all she'd gone through. But she became an excellent pastry cook. Paquette took up embroidery. The old woman did the laundry. And everyone, down to even to Brother Giroflée, did something useful. He became a carpenter and an honest man. So there is something to be said for just work. that common, everyday work that maybe will make you an honest man instead of, trying to get somebody else to do your work for you, which is a good thing. Yes?
Excuse me, can we see that in a political view? For example, for me, he kind of talked about all the philosophers at his time and all those theses there, and thought that they want people to have in mind. Also, he showed us a big picture of the world, what's going on in the whole world, in Europe, in America, and at the end, for me, that last sentence is like saying, because when I see here in 1723, it was the beginning of Louis XV,
Okay.
and it was like it's now the France start to be a great nation. So he was saying maybe, yes, this is what's going on everywhere. This is what's going on in the world. And if we want to be a great nation, like England and Portugal or Spain, we have to work with the tools we have.
Okay. So as France is coming into greatness, 1723, you're saying?
Yes, because this book came in 1729.
Okay, so it's like Louis
XV.
Louis XV
Yes.
is just coming into power. France is becoming a great nation. I think you're probably right. I think so, that he's writing for France to say, if we want to be a great nation, we have to do the work ourselves. Which would also talk about that would also fit with his criticism of aristocracy. He's a monarchist, so it's not like he doesn't want to have aristocracy, but he's talking about that we don't want decadence in the aristocracy. Everybody just works. We all put in our effort rather than sitting at our leisure and that sort of thing. For France to become great, we're going to work together and do these things. So I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think that probably is what he's saying in political terms, and he would be writing politically. Yeah.
And cultivate our garden, there's not going to be just the best of all possible worlds. You have to work to make the best of all possible worlds.
Yeah, there's not going to be a utopia or there is no El Dorado, and you wouldn't want to live there even if there were an El Dorado. It would get boring. Yeah. Very good. Okay. And we're done, I think, for today. Blake next time. So only bring volume